Hey everyone, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell icon, because today we're breaking down one of the coolest, yet most under-the-radar tank duels in history. The story we're about to tell isn't just dry stats. It's a real-life Hollywood blockbuster where a Soviet iron juggernaut faced off against a British aristocrat. And trust me, the outcome will shock you. Don't forget to drop a comment below telling me who you'd have rooted for in this clash of titans. Let's get started. The Proxy War. It's not widely known, but the Cold War standoff between the Soviet Union and the United States wasn't entirely cold. Sure, the superpowers never met in a final, head-on battle on their own soil. But on peripheral battlefields around the globe, their proxies clashed constantly. These proxy conflicts were the ultimate testing ground. They were a chance to really find out whose soldiers were better trained and whose weapons were superior. This was especially true for the weapon systems meant to be used in massive numbers in a real war. Automatic rifles, artillery, and above all, tanks. Whose were better? The answer often came from regional conflicts between Arab nations. Often, one side would be supplied by the US and its allies, the other by the USSR. And everyone watched closely to see which technology would come out on top. At a certain point, it became glaringly obvious to analysts that the export version of the Soviet T-72 tank, known as the Ural-1, was consistently and confidently outperforming the creations of the Western Alliance. The arena, an 8-year slaughter. The stage for this epic showdown was the brutal 8-year Iran-Iraq War. It was one of the most bloody and senseless conflicts of the modern era. Two powerful regional states, flush with oil money and armed to the teeth by foreign backers, clashed for regional dominance. For both the Soviet Union and the West, this war was a perfect live-fire testing ground. Iraq under Saddam Hussein was a Soviet ally. Moscow saw him as a counterweight to the new Islamist regime in Iran. So they generously supplied his army with modern weaponry, including a batch of T-72 tanks, specifically the export model Ural-1. These went to the elite Presidential Guard Brigade, the cream of the Iraqi crop. Iran, which had been a key U.S. ally before its revolution, received support from the West, primarily Great Britain. London sent Tehran a significant number of their main battle tanks, the Chieftain. And let me tell you, a lot of hope was riding on this chieftain, the aristocrat from the British Isles, the Chieftain. Picture this British aristocrat. The Chieftain was a technological marvel for its time. Its turbocharged diesel engine was developed by none other than Rolls-Royce, the gold standard for quality. Its frontal armor was so powerful that designers claimed it could withstand a direct hit from a 100mm shell. Inside that steel fortress, the crew felt relatively safe. But the Chieftain's pride and joy was its soul, a massively powerful 120mm rifled gun, the Royal Ordnance L11A5. This was a fearsome weapon that could punch through the armor of any contemporary tank. Amazingly, a modernized version of this same gun is still used on Britain's current main tank, the Challenger 2. Talk about longevity. Initially, the Chieftains ruled the battlefield. They faced off against older Iraqi T-55s and T-62s, machines from a previous generation. The British tanks would pick them off from a distance of 1 to 2 kilometers, never letting them get close. The Iraqi crews didn't stand a chance. The confidence of both the British advisors and the Iranian tankers grew with every easy victory. They started to feel invincible. Then, one not-so-fine day, new machines appeared on the horizon. A few Iraqi tanks with low silhouettes and distinctive rounded turrets that the Iranian spotters didn't recognize. These were they, the long-awaited guests from the north. The T-72 Ural-1. The Iranian tankers, buoyed by their past successes, didn't even flinch. We're these newbies, they probably thought. We'll tear them to pieces from our usual range of 1.5 kilometers. Just more tin cans. It was a fatal miscalculation, the kind you only make once. And the price was their lives. The Soviet juggernaut, the T-72 Ural-1. Now, Let's meet our hero. The T-72 wasn't just another tank. It was a revolution in Soviet tank design. It was conceived as a mass-produced, relatively inexpensive, yet incredibly effective counter to any Western threat. Unlike the Chieftain with its classic profile, the T-72 was lower, squatter, and much harder to spot and hit. But its main advantage was hidden inside the turret. It was a smoothbore gun, the 2A-46, with a caliber of 125 millimeters. Yes, the caliber was bigger, but that wasn't the only thing. The smoothbore design allowed for a much higher muzzle velocity. This meant the shell flew farther on a flatter trajectory and could punch through thicker armor. While the Chieftain could effectively engage at 1 to 2 kilometers, the T-72 could calmly hit a target from up to 3 kilometers away. Imagine that. The Iranian tankers just spot the enemy. They're just getting ready to fire, and Soviet shells are already screaming in, aim from a distance they can't even return fire from. It's like showing up to a pistol duel against a sniper. But a powerful gun isn't enough. You need someone who can use it. And here, the Iraqis were well prepared. The crews for the new T-72s were trained for 8 months, an unheard of luxury at the time. These weren't just drivers. They were top-tier specialists who knew their machine inside and out. Crew coordination was drilled to perfection. The reckoning, the battle at the Karun River. The day of reckoning arrived. The location was the marshy terrain near the Karun River in Iran's Khuzestan province. The Iraqi command, aware of the Chieftain's weaknesses, its low mobility and less reliable engine, especially in the heat, used a classic bait-and-switch tactic. A few T-72s pretended to retreat, luring the overconfident Iranian chieftains forward. The Iranians, anticipating another easy victory, gave chase. They drove straight into a boggy area where the heavy chieftains began to sink and lose maneuverability. They became perfect targets. Then the retreating Iraqi tanks turned. They paused for a moment, and then a slaughter began. From a distance where the chieftains simply couldn't effectively respond, the T-72s opened up with a devastating barrage. Powerful shells ripped through the British tanks' armor like can openers. Inside the vehicles, fires erupted, ammunition cooked off, and turrets were blown clean off. The battle was short and brutal. When the shooting stopped, several destroyed chieftains smoldered on the battlefield. The Iraqi T-72s hadn't taken a single serious hit. This wasn't just a success, it was a rout, a triumph of Soviet technology and tactics. But the Iraqis didn't stop there. They didn't just win, they collected trophies. The wrecked chieftains were hauled away. And most amazingly, the Iraqis gifted a couple of these tanks to the Soviet Union as a sign of respect. It was like saying, see, your weapon beats theirs. To this day, one of these gifts can be seen in the Tank Museum at Kubinka outside Moscow, a silent witness to that devastating defeat. Economic brief, the business and politics of arms. Let's look at this from another angle, the economic one. Weapon sales aren't just about helping an ally. They're a huge business and a powerful tool of political influence. Cost. Estimates from that time put the price of a single chieftain at around 500,000 pounds sterling. The Soviet T-72 Ural 1 was significantly cheaper, estimated at 2 to 250,000 rubles. The Soviet Union prioritized mass production and reliability. A cheap but effective tank could be built by the thousands and supplied to dozens of allied nations. It was a brilliant strategy to overwhelm a potential enemy with a flood of quality, inexpensive hardware. Political victory. The T-72's victory massively boosted the prestige of Soviet weaponry. After the Iran-Iraq War, dozens of countries across the Middle East, Asia, and Africa lined up to buy Soviet tanks. These were billion-dollar contracts that strengthened the USSR's economy and expanded its sphere of influence. The chieftain's defeat, meanwhile, was a blow to the reputation of the British defense industry. Who wants to buy an expensive tank that loses its first major encounter? Platform longevity. The economic efficiency of the T-72 is proven by time. Its production continued for decades. Even today, half a century after its creation, modernized versions like the T-72B3 form the backbone of tank forces not only in Russia, but in many other countries. This speaks to the colossal margin of durability built into it by Soviet engineers. The Chieftain, by contrast, was long ago retired from service. Epilogue: The legend lives. Think the story ends there? Not a chance. Inspired by their success, the Iraqis even tried to create their own tank based on captured and purchased T-72s, proudly naming it Al-Sadiq or Zulfikar. But in essence, it was the same Soviet platform. The final irony comes years later. After the U.S. invasion in 2003 and the fall of Saddam Hussein, the Americans began rearming the new Iraqi army with their own M1 Abrams tanks. And you know what? Iraqi military commanders, remembering the reliability of their old Soviet machines, flat out refused to completely give up their surviving T-72s. So, the Ural ones outlasted not only the British chieftains, but also managed to compete with much more modern American hardware. Lessons from history and a look forward. So what's the takeaway? This story demonstrates a simple truth. The genius of the Soviet engineering school was its pragmatism. They didn't build the prettiest, the most expensive, or the most technologically overcomplicated weapons. They built weapons that worked. They had to work in mud, dust, blistering heat, and bitter cold. They had to work simply, reliably, and be more lethal than their Western counterparts. The T-72 became the gold standard of this philosophy. It proved that real power isn't found in glossy brochures, but in smart design, powerful armament, and, just as importantly, the right tactics. It became a true people's tank, a symbol of an era. And its direct descendant, the modern T-72B3, is still in service today, a formidable force that can hold its own against many newer machines. Is there any better proof that its creators were right? So that's the story. A story of how Soviet pragmatism defeated British complexity. What do you think? What tank truly deserves the title legend in your book? The American M1 Abrams? The German Leopard? Or do you agree the T-72 is an icon? I want to hear your opinions in the comments. Let's debate. And of course, if this story gripped you, if you felt the tension of that battle, then please give this video a thumbs up. Your support is crucial for helping this channel grow. Subscribe, hit the bell, and stay tuned for more deep dives into the untold secrets of military history. We've got plenty more mysteries and shocking reveals coming up. See you in the next one.